All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of NHL DFS picks, lineup advice, FanDuel, DraftKings. We're going to be about 30 minutes doing the live stream pre-lock, answering all of your questions, breaking down the slate. I am Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined, hopefully a weekly edition, by Jack, creator of DFS Magic, powers the OccupyFantasy.com lineup builder. Jack, what's up, man?
Hey, Brian. And I'm sure you said NFL because, I fooled you because you and I are both NFL guys. And easy to think that's what it was.
I know. Well, it's hard to think of you as the NHL guy now, but as you see on screen here, folks, Jack took down the FanDuel GPP last week, almost took down the DraftKings GPP in the same day, and we'll get into that here in a second. Before we get started, though, go ahead and click that subscribe button below. That way you get notified when all of our videos and live streams go live here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. We always appreciate that. If you have any questions, go ahead and hop in the chat. They're on the sidebar on YouTube, and we'll answer them as we get them in. Again, we'll be here until 5:30 or so. We're going to talk through Jack's win, highlight some top plays for tonight, use the lineup builder, and talk about some very specific settings that even if you don't use the builder, you can apply to your own lineup construction process that Jack uses, and we'll dive into some of that as well. So let me get this tweeted out here really quickly. All right, tweeted out, good to go. So we got some people in the chat. What's up, guys? All right, Jack. So, I'm kind of disappointed you couldn't take down both in the same night, but I'll give you credit. It's been a long time coming for FanDuel. You got it. You got the W over there, 10K in the pocket. Really, really close on DraftKings. So talk me through that night.
That night was funny because I worked super hard on the build, and then the early games were all kind of just nothing, and I ended up just like falling asleep for 3 hours, like with the lights on, and woke up at 12:30 and like looked and I was like, oh shit, I have like multiple top 10 lineups. And then it was a good feeling because I noticed on FanDuel I had 8 skaters. I had the super stack of that San Jose St. Louis game, and it just occurred to me like, okay, I'm down like 3 points with 15 minutes left, and the guy ahead of me has like one guy. Oh, I have 8. So, I was literally just like, get a block, get a shot, and then, they did.
They got plenty of stats in that game.
They did. And then DraftKings, it looked live for a while. Toward the end, I could tell there was a couple guys ahead of me with the same skaters, but same deal. When I fell asleep, I was nowhere close on both sides. And then, it was not bad. I can't complain.
No, definitely cannot. So $12,500 in the pocket. Likely a lot more to come, and it seems as though the builder is only a month old or so for NHL. Obviously, we've been working on it for other sports, and it's been live since August for other sports. But NHL, and you've been new to NHL, and it seems like every single day you're finding some new nuggets to input into your lineup construction and process. Before we hop over to the builder, any high-level strategies, things you found that you want to talk about before we get into the nitty-gritty of tonight's slate?
Yeah, I think the theme for me last week was trying to better understand defensemen. Not that it's easy to identify the high upside offensive lines, but you can go to websites, you can read about which lines are going to score points, but the more we've talked, and I got to give a huge shout out to Duetical and Kaladin and Bill in the Discord, but like the more we all talk about defense, the more we realize it's kind of the key to the slates. Like when you win, your defenseman did well, and when you don't win, a lot of times your offensive guys crush, but you just lost out on defense. So I think just tonight and every night, I think spending some time on the defensemen by themselves is a big strategy thing.
Absolutely, and yeah, credit to all those guys in the Discord, and I think the NHL channel has really blown up in the last month or so, and it's a really good opportunity to chat, and even if you don't want to get involved, to just hop in and listen to what these people are saying. Everyone's discussing strategy seemingly every single day. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord is where you can get access to our Discord channel and talk with others that are members of OccupyFantasy.com. Jack hops in there. I don't know any other site where you can hop in and have a reasonable conversation with the creator of a lineup builder, and Jack's in the Discord pretty often. So again, OccupyFantasy.com/Discord. Links in the description below if you want to check that out as well. Jack, we got Ken in the chat. He says, big fan here. Want to know your thoughts on offsides and icing.
Yeah, still haven't learned it. Still not going to do it. If you type it to me, I'm going to just close the window. Yeah, I don't know what they are. Is icing like 3 lines or something? Is that what it is?
Dude, I don't know. You're asking the wrong person here.
but we joke, but like the cool thing about the Discord is that Brian and I are in there all the time, and we have a ton of experience with mass multi-entry, with high risk, with these big GPPs. But we don't know anything about hockey. But we have these other folks in the chat who are extreme hockey experts. I mean, like people drawing figures of like this guy's a right-handed shot guy, so he's going to play more on this unit, and we learn from them. And on the flip side, we could, they learn from us on just kind of high risk strategies. So I mean, it's like you said, it's blown up, and it's honestly been some really high level winning talk going on in there.
Absolutely. And, honestly, it's the same with MMA channel. Obviously, I had the 100K victory a couple weeks ago, but I couldn't do it without the guys in the MMA channel, Jake and Big Munch specifically, who helped me with the fighting side of things, where I'm obviously just more game theory and lineup construction based. So lots of good discussion going on in the Discord. Go check it out. Before we jump into it, T Nasty says he sees a lot of the pros pay up for defensemen. Jack, have you noticed while studying pros lineups any usage patterns of how they deploy their defensemen?
I'm still learning. I do agree that the pros very frequently use stud defensemen, the pricier ones. I think that is true to an extent, that if you just played like the most expensive defenseman, it's not a terrible way to get into that. I mean, there definitely are some cheaper guys, but yeah, I mean, I think I do notice that more often than not, they're using kind of those guys like Brett Burns or Krug or Makar. He's out tonight, but guys like that are just kind of rock solid, pricey. Letang is another one. Yeah, I think that's a good observation.
For sure. All right, let's hop over to the builder really quickly. Brad in the chat says Jack had plenty of icing on the cake, about $12,000 worth. So nice pun there, Brad. All right, guys, let's hop into the OccupyFantasy.com lineup builder here. OccupyFantasy.com/lineup builder is where you can learn more. Build up to 150 lineups using optimal lineup criteria for NHL, PGA, MMA, NBA, NFL, MLB soon on the way. So Jack, I got it up here. I know last week we talked about just running lineups with very little inputs off the bat to see what the builder and the Occupy model likes. Immediately, what kind of pairings stick out together. And let me see here. You know what I did this time around, Jack? And I'm going to get your thoughts here. I'm going to go to the stack. Sorry, we had a little slate refresh here, so give us a second. But I went into the stack menu this time around. And, well, we got to reload the entire screen. Perfect timing in the middle of the live stream.
And I'll just say for folks, that happens actually a lot in NHL. It didn't really happen with other sports, but there's a lot of times I've noticed where the FanDuel and DraftKings will add guys very late. And that's good. It's generally a guy that's going to play maybe on the fourth line, but they actually do add them and allow you to play them. But that's why you see these disruptions sometimes.
Yeah, very rare to be added that late, but like you said, this season it is happening more and more often. So Jack, what I was saying, so on the screen here on the stacking page, I have our generic stack set up. What I did, I actually I used the even strength stack dashboard in the model and sorted by ownership, and I checked don't use these stacks in the same lineup, and I just ran off the top 8 or 9 stacks together to not get any chalky pairings. Thoughts on doing that initially?
I like it, man. I mean, I think we've talked about when we see the top lineups, even in these large slates, there are duplicated lineups in these GPPs, and I would say literally always it's an even strength that are both highly owned. So yeah, I mean, if you're playing a large GPP, I think that's a good move. It's definitely a high risk move. But what this does is it'll force it. If the builder wants to use those skaters, it'll force a power play stack, and that's what I won with. And to your point, San Jose won. All those guys were like sort of 5% owned on FanDuel, but Meyer, don't know who that is, but the guy that plays on that power play, 0.8% owned, right? So there's your pivot, and so inputting a rule like Brian just did is exactly how you would end up with a lineup like that won.
Yeah, exactly. Ken says in 150 max, how are you picking lineups for your 20 max or maybe your smaller, your satellites or whatever it may be? And Jake immediately probably answers for you, says you don't want to know the answers to that. Jack, I don't know if you want to divulge on screen how you normally pick your other lineups.
Yeah, so he's asking because I've won a lot of tickets, and I swear I just have done random draws of the lineups. I have also tried to pick them, and I don't ever win when I pick them. I don't really know why that is, but I think other folks have said they tend to struggle when they handpick them as well. I don't know. I think you've been grinding some low entry or high dollar low entry ones, and it's been tough. So that's how I've been doing it, and it's been working. I mean, it's not going to win every night, but I think the point is, especially with NHL, the builder is going to put out 150 valid lineups. There's not going to be trash in there.
Right, and the fact that they're built with correlation in mind, obviously not all has the same upside and floor, but they all have smart lineups that are being built. So even if you just pick a random one like Jack does, or what I'm about to start doing, then you'll have a shot no matter what. So Jack, here it is. This is the first run I ran this about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and with the 8 or 9 most popular teams excluded from being paired with each other, here's the most popular pairings. I have it on the lowest optimizer setting, so this is the most optimal approach. Vegas, Edmonton, Vegas, Colorado, Colorado, Edmonton, and then of course our boys from Calgary get in the mix as well. Thoughts on this? And also I want to talk to you about Calgary as well, because if you guys watched us last week, we talked about how Calgary was going under the radar and how the model was picking up on some underlying metrics that they were going to blow up eventually. Unfortunately, they blew up on a non-main slate, and now they have one of the highest team totals tonight. So Vegas and their ownership has caught on to the metrics that the model was initially picking up on, Jack.
Yeah, we got to start with Calgary because my heart was broken. The main slate was great on Saturday. I think it was Saturday when Calgary played early, or else it was yesterday. But they just blew up. They scored like 6 goals, and their top line was responsible for like 4 of them. They all scored 30, 40 points. Clearly GPP winner right there. And like you said, the model has been on them for a week. I and others have been like, man, why is Calgary like 33% in my builds? They suck. But like Brian said, like they've got some really awesome metrics they're looking at in there. And we got unlucky this time that they blew up off the main slate. Now, like you said, team totals up, projections are going to be up, ownership's going to be up. They're probably still a good play tonight, but they're not going to be that huge leverage. But so in the future, if you see somewhat random teams like that the builder likes, and you're like, why? That team scored 0 goals last game. This is why. And I know you bring up that Samsung Korean baseball one that you like to throw out, but it's the same idea, I think.
Yeah, it is. Actually, let me get full screen here so everyone can see the builder here. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. And another one of those types of teams was San Jose on Saturday for you, right?
Yeah, San Jose was, for I'm worrying about hockey, but my understanding based on talking to people that know hockey is that's a pretty talented, very highly concentrated scoring top line. They're fully correlated with power play. Like it's generally a pretty good play. So to get, 5% ownership on that whole line is pretty awesome. And yeah, the model was all over San Jose. It was like, I think it was 30 to 35% of my builds, no matter what settings I did. So that's another great example of it. You just got to kind of trust it sometimes.
Absolutely. So let's see. We got Ren from our Discord is in the chat now. He says, how do I flatten my stack exposures? Also, how do I get the builder to give me some Ottawa? I actually like the Ottawa play a little bit tonight too, Ren. So Jack, any thoughts on how to flatten exposures a bit? Is there an easy way to say, don't give me 80% one team and 5% of another, kind of mix in the exposures evenly?
Yeah, there's a couple ways you can do that. The first one is in the advanced settings. If you just turn the randomizer up to medium or high, I know we built on low here specifically to show you which teams it really liked. But if you turn the randomizer up, that will generally flatten out the exposures and give you more of those lower value teams. And then the other more direct way is in the either in the stacks menu, you can create a rule for Ottawa. And when you do that, you have the choice to leave the percentage on automatic or actually assign a percentage. So if you leave it on automatic, it'll follow those rules for Ottawa, but it won't necessarily force a certain amount. But if you actually click set percent and you add like 10%, you will get 10% of your lineups with an Ottawa stack. And then the third way you can do it, which is even more direct, is you can actually stay in the player pool table and you just go to the auto line you want, like say the center for line one. You're like, I want 5% of this line. If you just put his min exposure at 5%, it'll pick up on the fact that, hey, I have to play full lines. So you'll end up with 5% of that line. The only caveat there is if you put minimum exposures to like really cheap players, you just want to make sure that you have your salary range set pretty wide, because sometimes it will think it won't be able to spend enough money if you leave it a tight salary range. And that's a good point. I think we've talked about this in Discord, but on these big slates, I would say minimum of $5,000 spread in your salary range. I mean, I run it on 15. Full disclosure, like it doesn't ever give me lineups that don't spend 15,000. But the point is, I don't want it to really factor salary, and I just want it to look at the projections.
Right, exactly. And I've rerun the builder here on the high randomizer, and you'll see our top team pair exposure is just 10%, and it's really flat after that. So it's certainly an easy way to do it. No surprise that we see Calgary actually at the top paired with Vegas. So we got Bill in the chat. He says, can you guys check the values on MPG? My builder just zeroed OFN ownership on value skaters, half the teams in the model. Yeah, we'll make sure to get that checked, Bill. Brad says, when looking at randomness, do you change it based on how many entries you're creating? What are your thoughts there, Jack? Because I think you could probably leave it on low if you're making a limited number of lineups. But if you're building, even if you're building just to kind of look at what the model is saying, I think putting it on high is the better move.
Yeah, I mean, I think for 150, go high. For 20 lineups, I think lower, medium are both fine. You can run on high as well. But yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it's fun to just kind of run on all the settings and see what it chooses and just kind of use that as information in your strategy.
Right. Exactly. So, all right. So we got these built. Before we dive into some of the defenseman discussion that we wanted to get into tonight, Jack, early thoughts, I guess not even early, we're an hour and a half away from lock, but thoughts on some of these teams that the model likes tonight that's being paired pretty often, leverage spots. Curious to get your takes, because you did build a little bit earlier, so I'm interested to see what your takeaways were.
Yeah. So, again, like we talked about, not an X's and O hockey guy, but not surprised to see Calgary up there, Colorado, Edmonton, usual suspects. Colorado's kind of a question mark. They switched their lines up a little bit on Saturday. So if you're going to use them heavily, just make sure you check, the Discord or go on Twitter and try to find, their pregame lineups. And, one interesting note here is you don't see Toronto anywhere on the chart. And interestingly, I got no Toronto on Saturday either, and it worked out. I imagine it's because Tavares is almost as expensive as Matthews and probably gets quite a bit lower ranking. They did score a few goals, so you feel good about that one. That's one you might have to try to add in. But I don't know, did anything surprise you on the top of this list?
Not really, honestly. There really wasn't much that stood out from a surprise perspective. I mean, Colorado has one of the highest team totals. They're always going to rank highly with the correlation between those top guys, like you said. So, yeah, nothing really surprised me that much. I'm kind of interested in how it was able to pair Colorado and Edmonton together so much. I assume it's using one of the line twos there, but definitely interesting nonetheless. So, Jack, you want to talk about some of this defenseman discussion while we wait for some questions?
Yeah, we got a couple questions in the Discord over the weekend, and people said, "Hey, how do I make it only use one-off defensemen?" And that's specifically, especially in DraftKings where you're forced to use 3 teams, you basically have to use a one-off unless you're going to play a mini stack. And so to do that, the only way to really do it 100% is you would use strict mode, and strict mode is a little more painful. You actually have to pick all the guys in your pool. But again, especially if you're building 150 lineups, if you're making a decent investment for the night slates, I mean, I think it really is worth your time to use strict mode and actually pick all the guys. But when you do that, you have those 2 columns. You have the use column and the stack column. And the stack column is intuitive. That means anyone in your stack. So if you're running a 4-3-1, it's only going to use skaters with the stack box checked for those 4 and 3 in the 4-3-1. And then the 1 is not part of the stack, so that's what the use column is for. So if you wanted only defenders in your one-off pool, you would make sure that the only guys that have the use column checked are defenders and goalies too. Goalies are also not part of the stack, but they're not going to get factored into the skating decisions. So if you use strict mode and you only choose defensemen in your use pool, you will end up with only defensemen as the one-offs. There is one final step here. And if you go to the stacks menu, you'll see a little checkbox at the end called the offense only mini stack. And the help text explains it, but really what that means is in a 4-3-1, you're inevitably going to end up with a 4-man stack and a 3-man stack. And what it's telling the builder is in the 3-man stack, only use the offensive guys. So center, wing, wing, right? Or if it's a weird one, it's wing, 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 center, center, wing. But the reason you do that is if you just kind of look at how the DraftKings lineup is constructed, if you use a 4-man stack with a D and then a 3-man offensive stack, that frees up that final defenseman spot for the defender one-off. So by using the offense-only mini stacks and only defenders in your use pool, you'll get 100% of lineups with defenders as the only position that's a one-off.
And I think we found that's the best, the best success rate, right? Is one-offing the defenseman. Are you doing those in 100% of your lineups now?
Yes, 100%, no exceptions. I mean, we've seen the one-off wingers and centers win. I don't know how I would even go about choosing those guys. But like you said, a big part of our strategy is trying to understand what the pros do, and the pros clearly play one-off good defensemen in these lineups. So I mean, that's the reason that that we're doing it. I think.
Right.
It just makes sense because from a correlation perspective, they're just not nearly as correlated as the other guys.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Exactly. Let's see. We got some questions here now. Robert asks, goalie, pick one: Grubauer, Rittich, Buick. I assume I butchered every single one of those names, but Jack, I'll start by saying that Grubauer, although ranking second, or I guess tied for first in the model, does have the highest projected ownership, and as we know, chalk goalies in NHL are never a fun time.
Yeah, we joke about this, but I mean, literally, I've been playing every goalie. I don't know. Have you been expanding your goalie pool recently?
I've always expanded, but I've always included the chalk goalies too, and now I'm just kind of coming around to the idea of, man, forget it. Just if they go off, they go off, but I'm not going to play a 15, 20, 25% owned goalie or more on those smaller slates.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I would say whoever has the lowest projected ownership, that's who I'd play in a high-risk contest. And you're right. I mean, especially on these big slates, there's going to be several goalies that are like 2% owned. And I would bet at least one of them, scores 35, 40 points. And that's how you win a GPP is you have a 2% goal. It's a huge component of it is a 2% goalie that scores 40 points. And to your point, if a 20% goalie crushes, you can certainly play that guy, but it's just not going to help you that much. When they win, there's a bunch of other lineups that move up with you. And it's just really hard you kind of have to have the perfect skaters to win in that situation.
Yeah, you really want to compete against less people. That's really the goal in every GPP. So to answer your question, Robert, it looks like Grubauer, Buick, and Rittich all rank, relatively similar in the model, but Winnipeg's goalie does have the lowest projected ownership of the three, so I'd go with him. Let's see. Chris asked, do you like Mangiapane and Backlund? Again, assume I have no idea how these names are pronounced, but these are Calgary skaters. I do know that. So let's see what the model is thinking about these particular Calgary skaters. Let's bring Calgary up, and we'll sort by off index. Yeah, so the nice thing about it, and Jack, we haven't talked about this really, is that both Backlund and Mangiapane have the high opportunity skaters symbol next to their name. Means their underlying metrics show that they've been getting getting the puck on net a lot in recent weeks or in recent games. Do you factor that into your player pool at all? Are you doing anything with it, or are you just letting however that's influenced into the OF index make all the decisions?
I usually let OF index choose, but like what I will do is, on these big slates, you don't really need to play a lot of third lines. I don't think. I mean, even when you build, they don't get used that often. But if I see a third line with a guy that's a high opportunity skater, I will definitely make sure to at least include those guys in the pool and let the builder choose. But to answer your question, I mean, what's cool is if you ask that question to some of the hockey experts in this chat right here or in Discord, they'll probably launch into the matchup of the night and how the lines match up with each other. We don't know anything about that, but what we know is they're correlated. They have high OF rankings. They have their high opportunity scares, like you said, putting the puck on net. So I think we would like them from that point of view.
Exactly. Yeah, really well said. All right, guys, we're going to be here for another. It's 5:27, so we'll be here for another 3 to 8 minutes, depending on how many more questions we get. All right, Jack, 90 minutes until lock. Any other thoughts or topics you want to discuss that we haven't hit on yet?
Yeah, I see someone, Brad, asked about strict mode process. I mean, it's not that, it's not that complicated. It's kind of tedious for sure, but I really just kind of check each line on Twitter or Daily Faceoff and FanDuel and the Occupy Fantasy model. And it's funny, like clearly no one, especially this year, no one is sure on hockey a lot of the time. But I'm really just walking through, checking the lines. If FanDuel, OF, DFO kind of disagree at all, I'll just kind of make a note of it and try to check it again before the lineups lock. That's really it. It's just taking time to actually click through all the guys. And then again, the main reason I do this is the defenseman. This allows you to precisely control which D-men get used. But that's really the process.
Yeah. Again, if you mess around with it, it becomes pretty intuitive. It is time consuming, but again, I think if you want to win GPPs, regardless of how good the builder is, you're going to need to spend some time, and we always preach that. So if you like what you've seen today, OccupyFantasy.com/lineup builder, powered by DFS Magic. Jack created the whole damn thing. And the nice thing about it is you have direct access to him through the Discord channel. So any questions you have, you can always hop in there. Or any suggestions you have. I know, Jack, we've had quite a few suggestions for NHL and other sports that people have said, hey, you know what, this would be cool to implement. And then in a couple days, you implement it. I don't know what other kind of service or other builder has that kind of service. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, honestly, it's really cool because, like, literally what for you guys to understand what happens is like, I'm like, hey, Brian, someone asked for this as a feature. Like, what do you think? Do you think this adds value to members? And, we talk about it and we're like, yeah, all right, and we just do it. Like we had the guy that Nolt is his screen up. He won 32K, whatever, week and a half ago using this. And the first day he emailed us and asked us to add a new lineup construction type to the priority table, and we just did it. And I think he was, clearly, as we learned later, he's a pro and knows a lot. So now looking back, like, yeah, obviously we should have that in there. But the 3-3-1-1, like, so the point is, it's a very collaborative thing. And again, with you have, I agree, it's a pretty unique thing to be able to just say, hey, can we add this? And then a lot of times we'll do it.
Totally agree. All right, before we get out of here, guys, if you have questions, let's rapid fire them in the chat. Jack and I will be happy to answer them about NHL, the lineup builder, DFS in general. You're looking at two guys here that have won, I don't want to say countless, but you need more than two hands to count the number of GPPs we won over the last couple of years. So lots of experience and lots of, we've had our hand in a lot of different sports and lineup construction types. So any questions you have, we're happy to answer them here as well. So be sure to click that subscribe button here on YouTube. That way you're notified when all of our live streams are happening. If we publish or upload any videos, you'll be notified of that as well. We're doing these live streams 6 days a week now, different sports, NHL, NBA, PGA, UFC, and of course MLB coming around the corner. Spring training is here now as well. The spring training daily plugs up on the site. That's a money printing factory, so go check that out as well. Be sure to follow. Let's bring me and Jack back on screen here. Let me change it on my end. Little producer magic. There we are. So be sure to follow Jack at DFS_magic_. You can get all the updates for the DFS Magic lineup builder. You can follow me at Brian Jester FF on Twitter. You can follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Let's see. And I think we got most of the questions answered. Ryan does ask, do you play every goalie in every stack? Jack, I know you said you've limited your exposure or excluded some of the high-owned goalies, but what about every single stack?
Yeah, I at least allow it to consider every stack. Like, I'll add every third line in. It probably won't use them 98% of the time, but yeah, I mean, I just kind of let it do its thing. And for goalies, I mean, I don't know the right answer. I mean, I've had on Saturday I played every goalie. So it works. But I would say when in doubt, at least include them and let the optimizer choose, whether or not to use them.
Yeah, and maybe the guy gets used like 1% of the time. You're like, all right, well, I'm not going to use him, so let's just exclude him or whatever it may be. Or you see a guy that you weren't even thinking about that ends up in 15% of your lineup. It's like, oh shit, maybe I should consider this guy. So I think that's it. All right, so that'll do it for this episode of the NHL DFS live stream. We'll be back again next week for another NHL show. The NHL Daily Plug is published on OccupyFantasy.com. Our co-founder Wild Lead highlights the top stacks and plays and lineup strategies. And that's posted on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. OccupyFantasy.com for members only. The Occupy model is also on OccupyFantasy.com. Ranks every skater, goalie, and stack on the slate with projected ownership. And of course, what we use here today, the OccupyFantasy.com lineup builder, created by Jack, who you've been listening to for the past 30 minutes. Create up to 150 lineups using our optimal lineup criteria. Same builder we use to win all the GPPs that we do. So, Jack, final thoughts.
No, man, let's give people their time back and us so we can go build some NHL lines before lock.
Hell yeah. So for
Thanks
Jack,
for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Brian for Jack for Occupy Fantasy. Appreciate everyone listening. Good luck tonight, and we'll